had to go home early, and the minute I walked out, I'm like, now they're playing with the evil thing, and they didn't want to take it out when I was here because people were playing with me anyway. And the only reason they were is because my mom called their mom, they didn't talk to me, and they didn't play with me, and the fucking thing gave me a key to the honeycomb hideout. Like, that was my entire, like, what 7-year-old did that? And that was my default setting. And so I never felt good enough. I always felt less than, which is one of the main realities of the board step, feeling less than. Not based in any factual reality, but based in a feeling. I'm feeling sort of some way. I'm up in my feels. I feel some sort of way about it. This dictated my reality for years and years and years, and I felt less than, even though logically I wasn't. I mean, I felt I was. And it really stemmed from a problem of perception that I've always had. I compared how I felt to how you looked, and I compared how I felt to how you looked. I compared how I felt to how you looked, which is inherently just a nonsensical equation because, shit, I barely know what I'm thinking half the time. How am I going to know what I think you're thinking? It's not happening, right? It's x times y equals 1,412. Solve for x and y. You can't, because there's no constant. My life was full of variables and unsolvable. It's a riddle, right? It was weird. It was like I was put on this planet with a really good map of like Venus or Pluto. It was a really excellent map. It was just the wrong map. So I was walking around bumping into shit like all the time, going, I don't understand. This isn't what it is. Or like, you remember when they had the bookmobile, and they were giving out free books? It's like I was in line to get the book for the handout, like the owner's manual, and the line was really, really long, and I was leaning on a dumpster, and some homeless guy goes, hey kid, let's smoke some weed while you're waiting. I'm like, oh, okay. And I went behind the dumpster, and I got high with this guy, and I forgot what time it is, and I came out, and the line was gone, and the bookmobile was gone, and the guy goes, it's all right, kid, you'll be fine, just wing it. Like, that's how I operated my entire life, like taking advice from homeless people that live in my head, just so you know. So, what I love about the 4-step is that it really is definitive of why I'm an alcoholic. And I said that there's these couplings, and a coupling is between 4 and 8, right? And step 4 and step 8 and the 12 and 12 have really profound ideas in them, like really, really profound. So if I am shame-driven, that means I have to wear a mask. I feel less than. I have to create a false persona. I start to believe that persona, but even after a while, I can't deny the fact that it's not really me. So I start to be ashamed of the false persona and put another persona in front of it. So by the time I'm in late adolescence, I've got 14 or 15 masks that I'm operating on. And I couldn't find my authentic self if you put a gun to my head, literally. And I couldn't understand why that was my default setting until it became apparent in step 4 and its other side, right? Step 4, I find out my moral deficiencies. And those deficiencies cause me to have behavioral problems. Those problems I need to remedy. So I need to make that list. That's why 4 and 8 are connected, so I can fix the things I've broken. And in step 4, on page 53, in the 12 and 12, it says, and I quote, the primary fact, number one fact that we fail to recognize is our total inability to have a true partnership with another human being. Right? My problem isn't that I like to shoot heroin in my neck and drink tequila. My problem is that I inherently do not realize that I am horrible about having intimate relationships. I cannot have a true partnership with another human being because I have been so ashamed for so long that I can't be my authentic self. That means whatever I present to anybody is fraudulent. Even though it's not malicious, I just don't know better, right? I don't know better. So what I'm telling you is inherently bullshit. And how am I going to have a solid relationship or an intimacy with anybody if the entire relationship started off on fraudulence? It's impossible. And when I get ready to make amends in step 8 and I make that list, it gives me even deeper idea of why I'm an alcoholic. It says on page 80, I think, let me double check, because I always invert the numbers. I remember what the page looks like. I just can't keep the numbers straight because I'm dyslexic. Yeah, it's page 80. I got that one right. So there. It says, defective relations with other human beings have nearly always been the immediate cause of our woes, including our alcoholism. And think about that. Defective relationships with other people have always been the main cause of every single one of my problems, including my alcoholism. Which means I don't have shit relationships because I'm alcoholic. I'm literally alcoholic because I've never been able to have a real relationship. Not once. Not ever. Because I've always been ashamed of who I am. Less than. So, let's talk about it in the big book a little bit. Anybody know where it starts when we get into the information? No? No takers? Nobody? Anybody? 60-something, maybe? After the third step? Possibly? Wow, you guys are not up to snuff today. All right. Thank you, 64. Of course, my sponsor has to show off. Like he knows what the hell he's talking about. Usually I look at Charlie and go, Charlie, if we want to learn how to drink, we'll ask you to share. See, that's the lineage of good sponsorship, because that's what was told to me, right? All right, so it does start on page 64, right? We have defective manifestations of character. If we look therefore on page 64, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. What is an inventory? Who here has ever been homeless or in treatment or broke? Awesome. That's the majority of you. So I'm going to assume that you find a group of upstanding individuals might have shopped at the 99-cent store or the Dollar General maybe once or 40 times. Just saying. And I did that all the time. And you notice that the stuff that goes from Publix, when it goes out of date, goes to Dollar General. Because they inventory it. And they're like, ooh, we can't sell it if it's 3 days before the sell-by date. So they send it to Dollar General, and the Dollar General looks at it and goes, we'll sell this for 5 days, and then it re-inventories, and it sends it to the 99-cent store 5 days out of sell-by date, and the 99-cent store says, yeah, we're going to go up until 4 days before the use-by date, and then it goes to the food bank, where you really broke-ass fools got to go get that shit for free. I lived on the food bank. It's my favorite Cocoa Krispies all the time. Always, you get the pallet. You just go and walk out with like arms full of Cocoa Pebbles. It was awesome. Because, cereal doesn't go bad after the eat-by date, just so you know. And if you pour beer on it, it's the breakfast of ex-champions. It's like Wheaties, but with a twist. All right. So you have to do an inventory to see the things that are not applicable anymore, that are no longer appropriate to stay in your inventory, right? And here's the thing. So we look at the step. I'm just going to talk about it. Forget the book. So here's the deal. It says that we make a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. Okay. How is it a moral inventory if I'm writing down all the things I'm mad at and all the things I've done? I'm mad at other people's behaviors, and I've done bad behaviors. Those are not moral. Those are ethical. Right? What is the difference between ethics and morals? Ethics are external, adjudicatable usually. They tend to be legalistic in nature, enforceable by society, whereas morals tend to be internal and organic. Right? I don't think there's a single culture on this planet that eats their children regularly. You could say that might be a moral imperative. Just say it. Right? Because it's kind of an internal thing. So if the step asks me to do a moral inventory, yet it's not about morals, the way it tells me to do it, really, it tells me to look at my ethical behavior, or even worse, my unethical behavior. How does looking at my unethical behavior reveal anything about my morals? And on top of that, I don't buy the idea of fearlessness. I've been driven by fear and shame my entire life. How can I be fearless? Especially in the beginning of this process. It's a near impossibility. I'm kind of one of those people that leans towards the idea of bravery, right? Of courage, right? I can't be fearless. Fearless is insanity, right? Bill talks about prudence, this idea of prudence at length, specifically when he gets into the 12 concepts and how to steer, right? What real service is. Prudence, he says, is the calm waters, right? Between being Pollyanna and being anxiety-ridden, right? It is concern without worry, right? I've never learned how to do that. We talked about this last time, right? When I do my third step, I understand, I have this revelation that the will is everything that will happen. It's my future, which is driven by insane fear. And my life is everything that has happened, which is my past, which is completely driven by resentment and anger. I turn those over, and then maybe I can be in the moment and do some work, which I need to be able to do the fourth step, because the fourth step is when the work starts, the busy work, right? Remember, 3 is the bridge between the concept and the action. But how am I going to do this? Because I can't be fearless, because I'm still replete with fear and anxiety. Well, what I do is I have to look at it this way. I have to engage in bravery, right? I have to do it in spite of my fear. And the way that happens is I have a sponsor who literally crawls into my ass and makes himself at home and makes sure that I do it by calling me every single day and going, "Hey, Charlie, how many questions did you do on your 4-step today?" Right? I have this other little torturous device that I use, and without bringing in other 12-step fellowships, I'm going to bring one in. There's a fellowship called OA, which is Overeaters Anonymous. They have an interesting 4-step that I give to my guys as the precursor to the actual 4-step, because I have them do this 4-step exactly how it appears in the book. Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Turnaround, right? Fear inventory, sex inventory, exactly the way it is in the book, right? But because a lot of them are old and maybe a little pickled and wet-brained, like my friend Charlie here, who's been drinking for a minute or two, I give them something to stimulate their memory, right? The Overeaters Anonymous 4-step is 128 essay questions that are categorized into... I'm not joking, ask him. He wants to murder me on a daily basis. It goes into childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and now. And what it does is it's written by this brilliant PhD psychiatrist who, it seems like they're all random, but they stimulate the memories. They help you remember things. And what we have to understand is really our trauma of childhood has created a template inside of us that makes us react even as adults, right? When I was a kid and I was afraid, I reacted emotionally. Now I'm older and the circumstances are more sophisticated, but the reaction is still from that 8-year-old kid. And you know what? I'm not an idiot. It's like this. It's like if you had a child that was a friend of yours that was 8 or 9 years old and he was a math prodigy, would you have him do your taxes? You would? Then you're an idiot. Because he may be good at math, but he sucks at tax law. So why would you have an 8-year-old do your goddamn taxes? It doesn't make any sense. But that's the way I operate my entire life. Right? That wounded kid is still making those responsive decisions. So how do I get to the root of that? Well, it tells me to understand my morals, but if my morals are internal levels, and then it tells me that I have to inventory my behavior, I have to look at the ethics. How does the ethics reveal the morals? Well, theoretically, it does it like this. I have ethical behavior that I have broken and lowered my ethics and lowered my ethics and lowered my ethics and lowered my ethics until my behavior at the end of my insanity becomes completely unethical, which means that it is a lower moral standard than I started originally. But I didn't violate my morals because those are internal. And if I violate the truth of who I am morally, I would have an existential crisis that would cause me to kill myself or get better. So what my drinking was a history of lowering my moral standards through rationalization and argument before I could violate them. If I look at the way my behavior has de-escalated over time, I can start to see it's not an inventory of my morals. It's an inventory of how far I have lowered those morals so I wouldn't violate them and die. You understand? It's like this. I'm sure people here have had a couple lower companions, right? Maybe once or 1,000 times. And my drinking was just like me lowering my morals. I would find a lower companion, I would get high and drunk with them, and soon, within a week to two, I would realize that I'm the lower companion, and I would have to find somebody new. The end of my drinking was a constant de-escalation of me looking for lower and lower and lower and lower companions, right? Listen, at the end, I would sit on the couch, drunk as hell at 11 o'clock in the morning. I would watch Jerry Springer. My life was in a shambles, but I would go, well, at least I don't live in Alabama in a trailer park, and I'm not having sex with my mom. So my life is not that bad. Like, that was my standard. You know, if I was ahead of that curve, I was like, killing it, you know? Because by comparison, you know, it's not all that bad. In essence, that's the whole thing. So I end up lowering these things, right? And I do it exactly the way it says in the book. I start with my resentments. I am resentful at a name, the person. I'm resentful at them. Why? Column 2, the cause. Because she cheated on me, or he stole my girlfriend, or he ripped me off for $40. What we got to understand is, I have, as an alcoholic, this crazy sense of justice. It's pathological in nature. Who in this room has ever wanted to murder somebody for cutting them off on the freeway? Legitimately, or for burning them on a $40 deal? Yeah, because $40 equals murder. That's not how it works. Right? But I start off as, if I am in shame, I end up in this victim mentality where I am the victim of a universal conspiracy to give me one right in the, you know. Right? And so I become this victim, and that victim mentality is perfect for me. Because once I am the victim of a universal conspiracy, I am now entitled to behave any way I want because I got that coming because everybody's out to get me. Right? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful cycle of psychosis. And I relish in it, right? I sit in it. In fact, I sit in it like this. Let me read you another thing from step 4 out of the 12 and 12. One of my other favorite little lines. And this one is on page 45. We are apt to be swamped with guilt and self-loathing. We wallow in this messy bog, often getting a misshapen and painful pleasure out of it. Right? My life was a series of me falling into shitholes and furnishing them. That was it. They're like, oh, we'll put the futon over there. Like, because I get this weird, twisted kind of perverse joy or familiar uncomfortability that's familiar in familiarity that I'm comfortable with not being comfortable with. Right? You understand. She's like, yes. Nobody understands that except for us. Right? Because here's the deal. I know what to expect. It's miserable, it's horrible, it's painful. It causes me nothing but existential pain. But I know exactly what to expect. There are very few surprises in that misery. I catch a case, I catch a bullet, I get ripped off. Those are the three things. I catch a DUI, I wreck the car, I go in the hospital, jails, institutions, and deaths. That's it. There's 3 variables in my entire life. That's the only 3, right? Oh, did I startle you in the back row? See, that's the thing. Every time, because recovery's not boring, because you never know what to expect. Getting up, being sick, getting high, getting well, getting drunk, going to bed, doing the same thing every day on a hustle, that shit is boring. And I know that misery, and I'm familiar with it. And I kind of like it because I know what to expect. But I can't get out of it because it kills me and it sucks my soul out, right? So I figure out who I'm resentful at in the first column. I look at the cause in the second column, and it can't be something as vague as like, he's an asshole. It's got to be a little bit more specific than that, right? I'm mad at so-and-so for this reason. And then I get into the real meat and potatoes, the third column. This is where it gets real, right? Because a lot of people will say, how does it affect you? And what does it affect? Well, my self-esteem, my pride, right? My ambition, my security, my personal relations, my sex relations, and my money. 7 areas of self. And a lot of times, you'll see these things where you just put the check on it, right? Like I check off, it affects this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Well, I also still, as you can probably tell, I have a little twisted way to approach the steps. So I'm not satisfied when my sponsees tell me which of those areas it affects. I want to know how it affects those areas of self. How does it affect those areas of self? And I spend a lot of time focusing on self-esteem. Because the granddaddy of all fears is not good enough. Which means the granddaddy of all defects is overinflated ego. Because those are 2 sides of the same coin. And what is self-esteem? It's how I want to see myself. And what is pride? How I want you to see me. Right? And what is ambition? What I want to happen. Right? And what is security? What I need to be okay in my distorted brain. And what is personal relationships? What I want this relationship to look like. Right? And what are sex relationships? Not how many times or whether I'm good in bed. It's this. Well, a real man don't take shit like that from this, and a real woman will give what to done a real. It's a crazy ass standard that doesn't exist that I put in my head when I was 7 because I saw some stupid shit on television. Know that. And I've held on to that thing ever since then. And it's unrealistic, and I never met that standard. That's why for all of you youngsters here that are in early recovery and thinking that you should, bring something to the table vis-a-vis like, maybe a relationship, like you're attractive to somebody, let me just hip you to a small reality. I'm fairly sure that the majority of you aren't the person you wanted to be when you were 15 or 16. Which means you don't live up to your own standard, do you? No. However, if somebody thinks you're groovy and all that in a bag of chips, you live up to their standard. Whose standard's lower? Theirs is. It's pretty simple. And unless you want to go slumming, stay out of the relationship game. It's kind of that simple. Because if you don't meet your own standard, but somebody finds you amazing, you definitely meet theirs. And trust me, y'all don't bring all that much to the table right off the gate. I mean, we could totally go on a date. I've got my longboard, and we can go down to Checkers. It's 4 for $3, and we could split the Coke. It would be awesome. I live in the homeless shelter. Just saying. But I got a hard part and a vape. And I look good in a flat brim cap. Seriously. You don't bring all that much to the table, right? But you do if you do a 4-step because you understand your idiosyncrasies, your fears, and the things that drive you and the shame that you have. So let's talk about this. So how does this pathology work? Focused on self-esteem. So if I say I'm mad at Susie because she cheated on me, how does it affect my self-esteem? Well, most people go, it makes you feel like shit. Yeah, no, that's not how it affects your self-esteem. Because the truth is if I really had low self-esteem, if I really felt subhuman, if I really, really, really felt less than, and Susie cheated on me, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be like, of course she did. I'm a jackass. Seriously, if I had low self-esteem, I would not be mad. I'd be like, yep, got what I deserved. The reason I'm upset is because I have an overinflated self-esteem that is the natural response to my low self-esteem, which is my state of fake shame. I am ashamed that I am less than human. That means I have to be more than everybody else. Let me give you an example. Anecdotal story time. Okay. So I went to Presidio Junior High School in San Francisco, California. And at that time, it was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. This was before 9th grade went into high school. And I was in my 9th grade year, and I was still, pimples, a little chubby. That weird thing where, you get called up to the board in algebra, you have the boner, you got okay. That whole kind of puberty thing jumping off, right? and it was horrible. It was merciless. And I've got this girl who like totally bugs me. I hate her. She's like my neighbor. She's like icky, but I just want to hang out with my boys and smoke weed already. And she's like bugging me, and I'm like, ew, you're a girl. You got cooties. I want to skate and smoke weed. Get away from me. And then I get to high school, and I didn't see her all summer because she went to summer camp. But all of a sudden, she like blossomed, you know. And I'm in puberty. I'm like. And all I want to do is like run up to her like, you're so pretty, can you just talk to me? But see, because I ignored her and treated her poorly, now she's dating Joe, the 11th grader, who's like the football guy, and I got pimples and I'm chubby and I'm horny as shit, and I walk onto the high school campus and I'm like, no one will ever love me. I'm miserable. And I'm insecure as hell. So I have a fear. That fear is that I won't be loved. So what do? Well, like any good alcoholic who was already drinking, but even if I hadn't, I decide to create a delusion, a lie about the way the world works that's going to make me feel some sort of way and stick to it. So what I do is I'm not a dummy, so I reconnoiter the schoolyard and I see Joe Blow in the corner smoking a cigarette. He's like, yeah, whatever, I don't really care. We should go out later if you want. Like, I don't care, you know. And he's like just Mr. Cool, right? And I see all the girls flocking around him. I'm like, oh, you got to be a dick to be attractive to women. I can do that. I guess that's the magic secret sauce. So I start to have this delusion like, oh, I get it. If I want to have a date, I need to be a dick. And because I already feel less than Joe, it's not enough to just be a dick the same level that Joe is. I got to be a little bit extra dick. You know what I'm saying? Because first of all, you got to knock out the competition, and I already feel insecure, so it's not enough just to be at that level. I got to be a little extra. So I have a fear. That fear creates a lie, a delusion. That delusion makes me have an attitude, remember, the extra dick. And I start acting like a jerk. And I finally get her in the corner in the lunchroom. I'm like, hey, you know what, we should go out because I got weed and like you could come over. And she just looks at me and goes, no, you're a dick. So what happens is the fear that only existed in my head about me being insecure has now been corrupted by my overcompensation. My actions make it come true. This is the pathology of the third column. I have a fear that creates a delusion that manifests in an attitude of badness that ends up with me doing actions that make the fear that was only theoretical true. And once that fear is true, I don't readjust. I'm an alcoholic. I double down on stupid because that's the way I operate, right? So this is what comes out. We have to have this idea, the inventory. I got to see who I'm mad at. First of all, I got to look at my behavior, which is unethical, so I see how I have lowered my morals. Because what does it say in the big book? It says incomprehensible demoralization. That means I have lowered my moral standards so much to prevent myself from violating them that I can't even see who I am. My authentic self is so far removed from my consciousness that I need a sledgehammer and one of those jackhammer thingies just to break it off. Because I've been so afraid and so ashamed and so insecure that I've taken my emotions and I put them in a box and I closed it and I put it in another box and put expansion foam and then I put it in a bigger Tupperware and put in more concrete and then I put in another one and I just kicked it right in the canal. So who I am is so far removed from me that I have to do this exercising, this exercise of uncovering, discovering, and discarding, which is what the fourth step is. And it really comes to play in that third column. Because what I get out of the third column is my fears. That becomes my fear inventory and my fear list. And I understand that now I am afraid, not based on anything. I overcompensate because I'm insecure. I come off like a total freaking jerk, and I injure everyone around me. Where have I done the things in column 1 to the person in column 2 and every other person I've ever met? Because when Susie cheated on me, and it came true because of my actions, because I'm afraid that if they found out who I really was, they would dump me. So I subconsciously sabotaged the thing in the first place or pushed them away, and it ended up badly. And I said, see, I know it. I'm unlovable. I might as well just throw beer bottles at a minibus and go anarchy. Because that's my life. I'm going to be a nihilist. whatever. Right? So I did that. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Right? So I start to see the fears that drive to delusion, make an attitude that end up in actions that backfire. I overcompensate and I have those fears. And then I see that those fears, now that they're real, I double down on them, become a bigger jerk, and hurt everyone around me. Because it's only fair. If I'm suffering, you're going to too. Because misery loves company. And then I get into my fear inventory. And this is where things get really, really real. And let me tell you about this. So, those statements that I say, right? So like if we're looking at the third column and I say, it affects my self-esteem. So I'm mad at Susie for cheating on me. So what's the statement? I'm mad because, how dare she? I'm a good boyfriend. I'm a good man. I'm a smart guy. I'm a catch. Well, what are the fears? The opposite. I'm not a good boyfriend. I'm not a smart man. I'm not a catch. I'm pathetic. I'm miserable. And I'm less than human. I am less than. The fears that are revealed are the opposites of the statements that I make in the third column. And when I have that fear inventory, I start to reduce those fears until I distill it down to the truth of my existence. And this is the truth of my existence. Because if we open up the book on page 68, it says something really weird. That's the fear inventory, by the way. And I'm going to open it and tell you what it says. And then you can look at me baffled. It says, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves the question, why do we have them? That's the question. What's the answer? Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? All right. Has any of you ever done a math problem in school and actually cheated off your neighbor and just wrote the number down, and then you got it back from the teacher and they're like, show the work? You know that? Okay, so that's what that shit is. Why do we have fear? The answer is because self-reliance fails. Like, show the work. How do you get from there to there? I don't understand it. Why do I have fears? Well, self-reliance fails. Shut up, I want to punch you in the mouth. Show your work, goddammit. What is the work? That's what baffled me. And it's only because of sponsorship that I come to realize what it was. What is the work? This is the work. You ready? My main fear from all of my fear list, above all else, is that I am less than. Right? See it in parentheses. Fear of not being good enough. Bill writes it 100 times. Less than, not good enough. Less than, not good enough. Less than, not good enough. If I'm afraid of being not good enough, I'm afraid of the result of not being good enough. And what's the result of not being good enough? No one's going to love me. I'm going to be unlovable. And I already, being someone who is adopted and alcoholic, I mean, I'm a cornucopia of insecurities and abandonment and rejection issues. Are you kidding me? All I had to do was add alcohol. I won the alcoholic trifecta. Guaranteed, right? Adopted, given up for adoption in San Francisco, genetic predisposition, bunch of hippie communists. Voice in the back of my head saying, oh yeah, your parents say they love you, but they really don't. Because the woman that carried you for 9 months threw you away. So here, have a shot of tequila. That'll make everything better. Trifecta, instantly, right? So, I already have this fear. If I am not good enough, which is true because my mom threw me away like garbage, then the result of that is no one will ever love me, really. And if I'm afraid that no one loves me, what I'm really afraid of is being alone. Because, granted, the people that live in my head amuse me, but they are shitty company. Seriously, like, they don't have very many good ideas, and they generally don't have my best interests at heart. So I don't want... Very loud and annoying. Sorry. So, I don't like them. So, I'm not good enough, which means I'm afraid I'm unlovable. And if I'm unlovable, I'm afraid of being alone. And if I'm afraid of being alone, because I'm afraid of the result of being alone, which is I have emotional pain. And if I have emotional pain, the result of that is drinking. I drink when I have emotional pain. So I'm not good enough, which means I'm less than, which means no one's going to love me, which means I'm going to be alone, which means I'm going to have emotional pain, which means I'm going to drink, which means I'm going to die. And I'm afraid of death because I'm afraid of the unknown. And I'm afraid of the unknown because I don't believe in God. Because there is no God. And if there is no God, I have to be self-reliant. And self-reliance always fails me. And if my life is a litany of failures, how can I not feel less than? It's a circle of crazy that happens in my brain within a half second before I make any decision I've ever made until I got sober. Less than, going to be alone. Less than, no one's going to love you, you're going to be alone. You're going to drink behind it, you're going to die. There's no God. You got to do everything by yourself. You suck at life. Less than again. Just like that. Over and over and over and over again. That is the pathology of my fear, and it's been the way I've approached my life since day one. What's the solution? God. That's the solution. Because all of these things that I fear are not real. False evidence appearing real. It's dictated me under emotional stress that this is the way I was going to live my life, and all it's got me is pain and trouble. And that's what the 4-step reveals, is how stupid and asinine I have been up until this point, believing in nonsense that has done nothing but hurt me. If I'm alive, then apparently the universe thinks I'm important enough to be here. Which means it probably loves me, whatever that means, because I'm not dead. Which means I'm not really alone when I'm in a group of people that share my experience, strength, and hope and know exactly where I'm coming from. And maybe I might find a broken person to connect with, and we could find God together, who definitely exists. So all of those things are not real. So I never have to be alone. I never have to be afraid of death. I never have to drink again, because God will intersect any one of those things leading to each other and change the entire reality. That's it. That's what I learned. In the 4-step is that I have believed a whole bunch of bullshit for years that doesn't mean anything, is not real, and the belief that I did in those things made me act and overreact. It caused me to have problems. The problems made the fear real. If I realize the fear isn't real, I never have to react to it again as long as I live. And that's the beauty. And that's exactly what it's about. And that's the revelation I have when I have good sponsorship. All right, thank you. We good? That was a long walk for a really small drink of water.
Thank you so much, Mark. And we're going to pass the baskets now in accordance with our 7th tradition. Here we go. Like that. Now I can't turn it off. All right. Well, we're going to end the meeting. We're going to do the promises, and then we're going to have the Lord's Prayer. But before we do that, first of all, I want to thank Mark again for doing the first step. Thank you very much. Second of all, I want to ask everybody that when we do stand to do the Lord's Prayer, that you pick up the chairs afterwards and put them up against the wall for us. That would be really helpful. Thank you so much. And let's see, Charlie, I think, is going to do the promises.
They sound really good in Irish brogue, too. They sound super surprising.
Hey, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
Your prayers tonight, please pray for me.